Hey everyone, just wanted to give two quick notes before the start of this episode. One pertaining to the format of this show going forward, and the other for just a quick technical issue I wanted to let people know about. Starting with this episode, I'm going to be aiming to split every episode in two and upload more frequently that way, probably one every 2 weeks, bar delays. The first episode will be the opening part where we're talking about recent media, movies, TV games that we've recently consumed and our thoughts on those. And the second episode will be the main topic where we discuss something that can be older or not as recent or relevant, but we pick our main topic and we just go for it, if it's a retrospective or in this case an older movie. And I'm doing that so we can hopefully get more content out more frequently. I'd really like to try and be more consistent with this now that I'm seeing kind of a more regular routine settling in post-COVID. And the other thing that I just want to bring up for this episode is we recorded on location at Patrick's house in a small room with hardwood walls. And for those who haven't tried recording, that results in a lot of reverb, a lot of you'll hear a bit of an echo, and I apologize for that, but it's not the worst, and you'll still be able to make out everything we're saying just fine. And this should just be a one-time thing, unless we decide to record in that room again for whatever reason, because this episode took a while to get together for various reasons, as you'll soon hear. With that said, thanks for listening and enjoy. Hey everyone, this is episode 41 of Sketch, Watch, Play, a pop culture podcast talking movies, TV, cartoons, video games, and everything that comes with those. You can find us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and most third-party podcast apps and directories. If you want to stay updated or send us feedback or topic suggestions, you can email us at sketchwatchplay@gmail.com, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at sketchwatchplay, join the Discord server located in episode descriptions, and if you enjoy what you hear, you can support the show by leaving positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and spreading the word to friends, family, and social media. I am John Fleury, and I am happy to have today's guest back on the show. From such episodes as the Donkey Kong, Nolan Batman, Ninja Turtles, and Pokemon retrospectives, and here today to discuss another super nostalgic property, it's my brother from the same mother, Patrick Fleury. Patrick, how are you?
John, I'm great. This is a little peek behind the curtain, our second attempt to do this episode.
It's our second attempt at recording and our fourth attempt to get it going. This episode is, if something goes wrong this time, I'm convinced this episode is cursed.
Yeah, we've had to change recording times a couple times. The first time because my wife dislocated her shoulder.
Fair reason.
And needed some help. I forget the reason for the second time. The third time, we were online recording the episode. We got about 10 minutes in.
Yeah, we started. This was a few days ago.
And the internet just totally dropped out at my place. So we have given the least amount of opportunities for something to go wrong by getting together in person, next to each other on the same microphone.
I was like, hey, I'll even make it easier. I'll come to your... This is the first time we're recording from your place.
Yes, we're recording from my home.
You've either come to my apartment or we've done it over, we were doing Discord and Skype and stuff.
Yep, so this is the first time here, and we are just hoping that we can complete this podcast.
I'm not taking any chance. I'm going to make sure we're recording right now. We are recording right now. Please stay that way, computer. This shouldn't be cursed. We're talking about one of my favorite movies ever. This shouldn't be cursed.
Yeah, exactly right.
But since we talked about on our last attempt, since you were on late last year, you've actually been able to resume your improv sessions.
Yeah. So as we kind of talked about on past episodes, I do improv with Washington Improv Theater here in DC, which John has also done classes and performances with.
Thanks to you. And that was also what convinced me to get into voice acting.
Yeah, which is super, I think it makes a lot of sense to me to go from improvisation to voice acting. But we just this weekend, my team, iMusical, which is an improvised musical comedy show, we had our first show just last night in I think 17 months. And it was just a blast to be just in the room with a bunch of people who were all laughing together. It was just... super cathartic and super fun, and I welcome anyone in any city to go check out your local comedy places, your comedy venues, as long as you're feeling safe, and check out some live comedy. It's a pretty good salve for the soul during this time. Yeah.
Thankfully, you, I, and our pretty much our extended family are vaccinated at this point.
Yeah.
I'm still taking precautions, like masks in public areas and that sort of stuff. But I just went to the mall with I saw my best friend for the first time in almost a year last Thursday.
Wow, I guess this is my way of finding out that I'm not your best friend. What a terrible moment.
My best friend that I'm not related to. It's a technicality, man.
Yeah, it was actually great. The theater itself is requiring like proof of vaccine stuff to make people feel as safe as possible. You did a little improv jam a couple weeks ago.
I did. Me and your wife, Kaylin, we did a free-form kind of public improv jam, and yeah, they required either a printout or a copy, like you bring your vaccination form, which makes total sense. It was fun. I got to pretend to be a chicken for one skit.
Thank God, it's about time.
And you pointed out to me, and I'm kicking myself for not taking inspiration from Chicken Boo.
If anybody in the audience does not know of the Animaniacs recurring character Chicken Boo,
then get out.
Then get the hell. What are you listening to this podcast for? But it's truly, truly wonderful. And John is even taking another improv class starting in August.
Finally, yeah. They've been open for a little while, but they sold out really fast because you have fewer spaces for one, and I'm sure there's tons of pent up demand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started in August, and I'm assuming they'll still have the cards requirement and stuff, but I'm okay with that, and it'll be fun to do that again.
Yeah, it'll be a blast.
So we have a bunch of stuff to discuss today. I'm just going to drop a real I'm getting back to watching movies because we're going to get to we and your wife did our first in theater movie since COVID, so we're going to have stuff to say about that. But I actually did a little dip into streaming theater, simultaneous theater stream releases. And double dipped the original Space Jam and the new Legacy.
Oh, how was it?
Space Jam held up better than I expected to. I do think that it kind of loses focus halfway through when the actual game starts.
Yeah,
like there's less of a plot. But I do not recommend the new Legacy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hearing. Kaylin and I just a few weeks back were like doing some just HBO Max scrolling, and we found the old Space Jam on there. We ended up watching it, and we were both like 45 minutes in, like, this is way better than I was expecting it to be. Like, it's still like...
It's not great.
It's not... Well, there are things about it that are great, but it's
hit or miss.
Yeah, it's very hit or miss, but it still has some like wonderfully like just like nostalgic moments, and there's nothing like absolutely cringy about it. Even like the dumb stuff is like still enjoyable to laugh at.
Or it's animated well.
And I remember at the time being shocked by the animation of Space Jam back when I didn't even know much about animation.
Sure.
But that movie held up well. But yeah, I have only heard very lackluster things about New Legacy.
Audiences are loving it. I'll give them that. So it's doing.
Critics aren't loving it.
No, and I'm not loving it. But it feels very. We're not going to make this a Space Jam segment, but I'll just say props to, as I would to with the original, and a lot of anime movies I don't like. Props to the effects artists. I think all the animation visuals, both either the CG Looney Tunes and there's like a good half hour of 2D animation. In like classic Looney Tunes of this, which you don't get on the big screen much anymore, and it looks great. And they did like great 3D versions of them. Well, the movement and stuff is still very keeping in the spirit. It's just the writing. It's very bland. I barely laughed. The first one has a really silly plot and weird, but it has some good lines. It has some good moments from both cartoons and the live action actors. And this one's just like it just kind of exists.
Yeah. Well. Unfortunately, that was not as exciting as we wanted it to be, but we did see another movie in theaters together.
Let's transition to that first. I had it second on the list, but it's too good a transition.
Yeah, so we saw, my wife Kaylin, John, and I all went to see Black Widow.
You don't know everything about me. I've lived a lot of lives before I was an Avenger, before I got this family.
In theaters, which is... It was definitely my first movie in theaters in 18 or so months. It was yours too, yeah?
Yeah, I'm guessing Kaylin's. I think my last one was Sonic.
Okay, yeah, mine was Sonic too, actually.
I think Kaylin said she saw it with you and some other friends.
Yeah, there's a running theory that Sonic the Hedgehog caused the pandemic, but...
I would place the limit on Robotnik.
But we saw Black Widow in theaters, and I've been nervous about this movie just because... I have been struggling with the idea of like a Black Widow movie like posthumously after her death in Endgame.
I thought you were going to say in general, and I'm like, I thought like you have a problem with the character, but it's more the fact that we know she's dead.
Right. No, I've loved the Black Widow character, and I'm a huge fan of the. Yeah, there's going to be some spoilers here, but I love the Black Widow character, and I've loved kind of her history through the Marvel movies. I think one of the first like times in a Marvel movie that I like literally jumped out of my seat was in that moment in Iron Man 2 where she takes out those guys in the hallway.
Well, that's the best part of that movie.
Yeah, I lost my mind at that. But I was very kind of like sad, and some of the sadness has carried over, that we were like finally getting this like truly like epic moment with this character.
A real focus on her in a big project, yeah.
Only to know that it can only go this far. Like this is the end.
It.
This is the only one we're going to get.
Yeah, and post-release it still sounds like this is ScarJo's MCU swan song.
Yeah, and it is like a mixed bag of emotions, because judging the movie like solely by itself, I really liked it. I thought it was like really fantastic. I thought they introduced, like 3 really big like side characters.
One of the best supporting casts in a while.
All of which who I thought were kind of a blast.
Yeah.
Especially Florence Pugh, who I can talk about forever in this movie.
Yeah, I still love that. I was like, oh, she was in Midsummer, and you and Caitlin were like, you and was like, don't watch Midsummer, man. You're not gonna have a good time.
I didn't enjoy Midsummer, but I think she's great, and she's amazing in Little Women. She's been amazing in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, she's blowing up.
And she's a phenomenal actress. But gosh, she just was the greatest comedic relief in this movie, and then also had like so much heart.
Yeah, because I think the fact is like she comes off as more over all of it than Natasha, and even like doing some meta jokes about like she has her own like take on this Deadpool superhero landing joke basically. Mm-hmm. Like she notices that duck down, one hand on the floor pose.
Oh yeah, she like
why are you
makes
posing
fun
for people?
Yeah, making fun of some superhero tropes that I'm always a little fun at that meta joking. I think is good.
Yeah, if you don't go overboard with it, they strike a good balance.
Yeah, and so I think the movie is very phenomenal at not taking place all in the past, but giving you a good deal of info about the way Natasha was brought up and kind of became Black Widow and all this stuff. But I also just think it's a good story in and of itself, and it's a great introduction to Florence Pugh's character. And then I had a blast with David Harbour, who I always liked.
Red Guardian was an MVP for me because he's a slob. He's like this out of touch, kind of full of himself, blowhard, but he's kind of weirdly lovable. Yeah,
he actually. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but he reminded me a lot of a character in the game that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But then I also thought, oh gosh, what's her name? The woman from The Mummy.
Rachel Weisz?
Rachel Weisz was also just like very delightful. I thought the cast had like very phenomenal chemistry, and just a fun movie overall. The only like little like warning, which isn't even a negative thing about the movie, but like a warning, is that it's very, very dark at times. Like it deals in human trafficking.
The beginning we were like, oh.
Yeah, and it deals with some like really like kind of scary and sad abuse stuff.
Yeah, the main villain he's in the shadows for her, and then when you see it, he's like, I've heard people say like, this is like the Harvey Weinstein of MCU supervillains. He is a creep.
Yeah, it's very foul, and it's kind of it
has to be intentional at this point.
Yeah, but it's also just kind of it's hard to watch, and not in like it's bad way, but in like this is just like very tough.
This is human cruelty.
Yeah, it's much more. It feels very real, the cruelty of it, but. This is all to say, I thought the movie was really, really excellent. I really enjoyed it, especially any scene between Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh. But it did. The only thing I will say is like a week or so out from watching it, the one thing that has like unfortunately kind of come to me is like this general feeling of disappointment. That
I know what it is.
That we get this character, this like moment for this character, and then they're just gone.
And who is that?
It's Black Widow. It's Scarlett Johansson. I
thought but the fact that there's not going to be more with her.
There's not more with her. That we didn't do this earlier, and I also think like, gosh, I wish this movie had come out before Endgame. Like
it should have been between Civil War and Infinity War.
Yeah, it really should have been. I understand that it was just production schedule stuff, and
it wasn't even COVID. Even if COVID didn't happen, it was supposed to come out last year. So
yeah, something about that deflated it a little bit for me in just the way it was experienced. But I think, if you're somebody new to the Marvel movies and you watch them all in order, in chronological order, you're going to have a very good time with this movie. And I still had a great time with it. It was just tough.
It is sad that, but I do kind of view this as, the nice thing you can view this as, since it's Natasha's last role, presumably, you can kind of see it as her putting a bow on her past demons, because she does kind of. Because by the end, like, she's basically stopping the widow program. She's freeing these other people who won't have to go through as much of this stuff as her, and her and Yelena killed the mastermind. So it's
right.
like you can kind of see her getting some comfort from, like, knowing that she's put a stop to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's totally fair.
I do want to ask what I was getting at, because I'm seeing there's something to it that's pretty positive online, though maybe not as strong as like Endgame or other stuff. I did want to get your opinion on. I think the one thing that it seems to be letting people down is the portrayal of Taskmaster, because it's very different from the comics. So I think you're familiar with Taskmaster in comics, right?
Yeah, I am. To be fair, I don't have a. I've read some stuff with Taskmaster, but it's been a while, and I don't remember like perfectly clearly. That was a twist that I guessed during the movie. The moment the daughter was brought up, I leaned over to Kayla and it was like, she's not dead. I
thought it was either her, or before they revealed her, I thought it was Rachel Weisz's character, because she was injured back in the day.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, maybe she's dead, and she's not here. That's probably the daughter or something.
I think the only reason I didn't think that is because in the trailers we see them all at the table together and all that stuff.
I kind of avoided the trailers after the first one.
Okay.
I'm trying to do that more with some MCU movies that I'm excited for.
Yeah, I think I think it. The only real disappointment for me was that, looking at all the Taskmaster stuff, it seemed like someone who was, mastering all these Avengers moves.
Which is such a cool. Makes for good action scenes, too.
Makes for some great action scenes, makes for some very fluid things, and there's something very fun about watching Black Widow go up against all of her teammates and stuff like that. But the only disappointing thing for me was that character didn't have any, like, Avengers-related motivation. Like, I was hoping for something more like... like Sokovia, like related, like something where they had some kind of, like a Zemo, where they had some kind of connection to the Avengers that was making them obsessed with perfecting their stuff.
They don't really give context other than, well, they're the world's best, so I'll just
and it doesn't seem like she didn't have any like obsession with getting this.
No, she was being controlled.
Yeah, and so I think it's fine. It made for some amazing action sequences, but it made me feel like that character didn't really have any interesting motivations.
She was barely a character after she got unmasked. That's my thing. I'm like, maybe they just were like, there's so much other stuff, we can't cram this in. But she feels like the casualty, because we got because we were talking about how strong this like family unit they form is, and how scuzzy the actual villain is, that sort of stuff. So I can see that's my complaint from like a movie perspective. I don't know how I compare to. I guess it's like, well, one, it's a Taskmaster's a guy in the comics, and I think he's kind of like a mercenary. Is he like a mercenary?
I totally forget. It's been so long.
Okay, so yeah, that's the one character I think could have gotten a little more service, but it's a little easier to swallow when they don't build her up as the main villain or whatever, and there's like such a strong like protagonist like ensemble going on.
Yeah, I agree.
So, any other things you want to say about Black Widow?
Only that, I know I maybe sounded negative on some parts, but I really thought it was phenomenal, and I will say the one of the best things about it is like how excited it got me for, Florence Pugh's next chapter in the Marvel cinematic universe.
I was going to say, I think I told you before we saw that I did have one thing spoiled for me online before I saw it. Mm-hmm. I was on Tumblr and I saw like GIFs of the after credits scene. Where we see Contessa again, Julie Dreyfus. But I guess that's not technically. I guess that wasn't technically a spoiler for me, because it came out in the news when she first appeared in Falcon Winter Soldier. She was originally supposed. This was supposed to be her first appearance. But production got shut and release got shuffled because of COVID. I actually think her Falcon Winter Soldier intro is stronger because there's like that shot of her walking on heels. So at first you're like, who is that?
Yeah.
And this one is more comedic, where she's just like blowing her nose. I'm allergic to the Midwest.
Yeah, and I also think. I'm very happy about stuff like that, because it seems like they are. I mean, between the announcement that the new Captain America is getting his own movie and won't be like relegated to just a TV role.
That's what we're worried about.
And like the fact that Contessa is also appearing in the movies, kind of guaranteeing that the MCU, Disney Plus series are like truly as integral to the MCU as the movies are, which until we saw those integrations happening, I was hoping these weren't characters that were being like relegated to TV.
Oh yeah, you weren't sure if you were like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but I love that when Valentina popped up, I saw you kind of do like a little fist pump.
Oh, I also just love Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I'm a huge Veep fan and was a huge Seinfeld fan. I just think she's phenomenal.
Seinfeld's our dad's favorite show, so
yeah.
I still need to watch more of Veep. You showed me the first episode.
She's just amazing in it. She is so irredeemable. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, she kind of seems like she could be irredeemable in this. Like she's kind of a scuzzy person, but
we'll see.
Funny way. Like
she's still kind of confusing, but we'll have to see what her full deal is.
I kind of see her as like she could be like an anti-hero Nick Fury equivalent.
I'm wondering, yeah,
more off the book, but yeah, great time with Black Widow.
Please stand by.
Okay, so I'm going to include this earlier in the episode before we started our Aladdin talk in between recording sessions. Patrick had the idea to invite his wife Kaylin in for her first appearance on the show really briefly, since we saw the movie together, and Kaylin's always been fun to talk to about these things. So Kaylin, like general thoughts on Black Widow first off?
Yeah, I thought it was a great movie. I thought that it's nice to see Scarlett Johansson have so much screen time as compared with other movies. And I also really love the new Black Widow character. So it was exciting, I think, just to see like so many great fights by women leads and like a lot of context for her story. So I really liked that.
Yeah, we talked about both how this kind of seems to put a nicer bow, like both it's clarifying and kind of put a bow on her origins. And she's basically going after the guys who were responsible for it in the first place. But also, we were talking about the strength of that new like dysfunctional family unit.
Yeah.
So did you have any thoughts on Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Rachel Weisz? Any thoughts on them?
I mean, I was so happy to see Rachel Weisz back. I know she's not been this character before, but I love her as an actress. So
yeah.
I had mentioned I loved her in The Mummy when we went to see it.
I didn't see the original Mummy.
She's fantastic in the Mummy series, and so like I was really excited when I saw her, and I thought her character was really interesting because she clearly is conflicted. You know, she cares about these girls almost like daughters, but she also has had a really tough life herself, and so she has some challenges to deal with.
She's also like she and Natasha are like the straight women of the group, straight person, because Yelena is very sarcastic and over it, and the dad is a bum almost.
Yeah,
he's over the hill.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I had trouble. What's that actor's name?
David Harbour.
I have trouble not seeing Stranger Things when I look at him.
Yeah.
but he was great too.
I'm also happy for him because I didn't bring this up with you. I think the first time they tried to make him a star was the Hellboy reboot that nobody liked, that like nobody saw.
Okay,
so it's
nice me, I never saw it.
Yeah, I heard it was terrible, and so I'm happy that he's getting another shot at this. And I definitely, if any of these characters are, well, I think Florence Pugh could be like in a movie. But if any of them's going to get the Disney Plus like side character spin-off show treatment, I would like to see him because both the fact that he's actually a legit super soldier, like Russia figured that out, his weird like non-existent feud with Captain America, and just him trying to tell stories about like remember like the warmth on his hands and stuff like that. I'm not going to say specifics, you should see the movie, but
he definitely it's like one of those things like in the real world where you only see your part of the world. Like we've only seen Captain America and our understanding of super soldiers.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Russia's got this whole, its own program, which I think is like, I always like the geopolitical aspects of these movies. And I think that's so true to like, we have our own version of what we think is the world, and then there's this whole other world that gets opened up.
There's other countries in that.
Exactly. But I think I would definitely like to see a movie with Florence Pugh, and like I felt like the credits scenes possibly set that up.
She's going to be in the Hawkeye show. That's her next appearance.
Yeah, and that would be cool, but I would rather see like a Black Widow. I would love to see a movie with them like searching for the other Black Widows that they now have the file
I could see them doing
a show.
I could see them doing a Black Widow too, just not about Natasha. But I also want to find out, because they probably just didn't have time for it. Like, what was she up to after this movie and between that and Endgame? Because years passed,
True.
And she might have not been snapped, so she could have had a lot of time to build herself more.
Yeah, it's like almost hard to keep up with the timeline with this one
because they did a big jump.
Yeah, It makes me wish this movie happened earlier.
Patrick was talking about that, how it should have been between Civil War and Endgame.
Yeah, we read an article that was like, why did it take so long for Marvel to like make this movie when so many other characters had movies and like, you know, she's such an important character. And it's like, this is a great movie, but like we know she's dead now. So it's over. You know?
That's one of the humps.
I mean, so it's great. It's great though that they set it up and that like Florence Pugh is just so wonderful. Like she's sarcastic and funny and like I would love to see her as a lead.
I was talking to Patrick about her other roles. So they know you like don't watch Midsummer, but you liked her in Little Women.
I saw Midsummer.
But you don't recommend it.
No.
Yes, but did you see her in Little Women?
Yes, she was amazing.
I still need to see that.
Yeah, Little Women is fantastic. Really good movie.
Oh, I will say, I need to bring this up, because you know how Greta Gerwig did that in Lady Bird? The director.
Yeah.
Do you know what her next project is? I have no idea what this is going to be about. She's doing a Barbie movie.
Oh, that should be fun.
I mean, if you want a more, like, progressive take, then maybe she can do that. I don't know.
That's why I think it'll be fun. I probably wouldn't want to see a Barbie movie if somebody else was
just
directing
a generic thing, but she's probably going to put a spin on it.
And no, I should say, Florence Pugh was an incredible actress in Midsummer. I just found, like, Midsummer's just not my thing.
Right.
But it is, like, cinematically, it's a beautiful movie. And her acting is
I'll probably watch it at some point because I liked Hereditary, but I'll also check out her other stuff.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts on Black Widow?
I just think also, like, another great feminist Marvel movie, but in a completely different way, because I think like it's nice to see women who are like natural fighters, right? Who don't necessarily have like superpowers in the same way that like
she's not
Captain Marvel does. Like I think that's one of the things I loved about Black Panther were the women warriors, because they're just like strong fighters.
Yes.
And I think that was really cool to watch a whole movie of like great fight scenes.
I think they did say they are, besides the Black Panther sequel, who we don't know who the lead is going to be.
Yeah.
I think they are planning some sort of Wakanda series, which I would love a show about the Royal Guard.
Yeah, same. I mean, those there's probably so much to explore there. And I also thought that the opening credits to this movie were so great.
It was brutal.
I mean, so great in the sense of like I felt like it's like really for me, someone who does like gender work, it was like the world is very hard for women and girls, so I felt like it was setting up this movie that had a lot of fight to it, with a lot of like the context of like the pain and challenge.
I did want to say, and I didn't bring this up because I was saying to Patrick how when you finally see the main villain who in the last third, he's not some powerful. Well, I mean, he's not superpowered, but he's just this. He's a slime ball. He doesn't value the lives of these women he's hurting. And I actually read an interview with ScarJo, and she said those sort of themes were kind of their response to the initial rise of the Me Too movement.
Totally. I felt like all of the Office scenes just like exuded Me Too movement. Like this guy in a position of power, like with trapping basically women in the room and like making it so that they like
can't
physically
hit him.
can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was very like powerful. Some parts were like a little too on the nose when he said the stuff about how the world's like most neglected resources was women or something. Yeah. I was like, okay,
still sleazy.
It's sleazy, but it just, we don't have to lean into it that hard. Okay. I think that was kind of my take. But like I really did enjoy the choices that they made.
Yeah, great time overall.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I mentioned to Patrick, I'd love to have you on for a full episode sometime.
Totally.
I know you said you don't have experience with podcasts, but this is for fun, so don't worry about that.
I know. I'm more of a novice in some senses in this Marvel universe.
Just be yourself. It'll go well. We can talk about it in the future.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Please stand by.
And I guess before we watch Black Widow, you and I spent some time both getting hyped and then playing through. I'd say the first PS5 exclusive I was really hyped for, that being Ratchet and Clank Ripped Apart.
Dr. Nefarious just crowned himself emperor of this dimension. We've got to get him and us out of here. But without the Dimensionator...
I think we have to build a new one.
Yes, so, we've talked, John and I, quite a bit. We both have the PS5 after a lot of work.
You gifted me mine, which is still like the coolest thing that's happened to me this year.
Yeah, I spent months trying to get a PS5. I finally got one in January. I know that's not a good final. I know that a lot of other people, maybe even people listening, have been trying for longer. But I got one in January, and then immediately after started trying to get one for John. I basically convinced our family to all chip in and do a kind of an early birthday present for John and get that for him. And I was able to get that to him, I think, February or March.
It was February.
And so we've been talking a little bit about the gameplay and stuff. And, the PS5 is an awesome device. We've really enjoyed it. When I went from playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla on the PS4 to the PS5, the difference is remarkable. It is so much better playing.
Also talked about Miles Morales, how much you hated the loading times on PS4.
Oh my gosh. Well, I got Miles Morales on PS4 and was like, I'm actually just going to wait. Like, I've been playing this. It's slow, and it actually
didn't run great.
Didn't run great, and the visuals in that game in particular are shockingly different.
It's almost like they were focusing on another platform.
But, we've talked about the games being released that are PS5 exclusives, and before Ratchet and Clank, the only two were the re-release of Demon's Souls, the remaster of Demon's Souls, and Returnal.
Yeah.
Both of which I liked quite a bit. I'm a fan of the, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, kind of Sekiro.
I think they've termed that
Souls-like games, and I think they're a blast. And I think Demon's Souls is beautiful, but I also think it's not a new game, and it's definitely not a game for everyone. So while it was a PS5 exclusive, it didn't feel quite as much like some epic launch title. Same thing goes for Returnal, which was a game that came out, a roguelike game that I thought was much better than I ever expected it to be. I'd kind of written it off, and then,
I think a lot of people were surprised by it.
Yeah, and then reviews came out, and I finally tried it out, and I was like, oh, this is a blast, and I spent a ton of time on it, and I think it's a very addicting, fun game, but it's got very limited story, very limited actual character development and understanding.
I also rented and played it a bit, and I'm like, this seems cool, but it's very bleak. It's very moody, and after the past year and a half, I'm kind of looking for more, cheery stuff. And thankfully, a series that we have been with since day one had its first PS5 entry coming up.
Yeah, and that's another big difference is that these other games, well, especially Returnal, is it's a new thing, and I love new properties. Yes. It's very, very fun, but it didn't have anything there's no expectations with it. And this is the first big, game series to come to the PS5, which is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
And so this is something that this is actually going back to the first episode of the show as well. But I'll start with, you and I have been a fan of Ratchet and Clank from literally the beginning.
It was one of our first big PlayStation games. It might have been my first games to grab me for
it wasn't the first you played, but it was the first that really got you.
It was the first game I got obsessed with.
It's also, I think, one of the biggest leaps in quality for a sequel, because the first one doesn't have the XP or the strafing and the weapon level up, and then they add that on command, you're just like, oh, this is a game changer.
Yeah, and it's also just I remember at the time, even though Ratchet is kind of a tool in the first couple games.
Yes, they addressed that. Well, the first one. He's more sarcastic.
Yeah, and he gets a little bit better. I remember thinking wow, these are such fun big characters in this game, which was something especially with all the full voice acting and all that stuff, I was like, this is so awesome.
It's always felt like a playable cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to. So we played all the PS2 ones. I played the PS3 ones, but you skipped that because you were in college at the time and you never owned a PS3.
Yeah, I think I played through
a little bit of Tools of Destruction, the first one.
A little bit of Tools of Destruction, and there was another one that you had that I played on some vacation when I was home that I played through a bunch of.
You remember what it was about?
I don't.
Okay, Crack in Time is the third one and a lot of people's favorite in the whole series.
Okay, yeah, and so I think I actually haven't played Crack in Time. Maybe it was just Tools of Destruction, but you sent me, before Rift Apart came out, first you told me to play the PS4 kind of update of the original Ratchet.
I got that for you for Christmas, I think, that came out, and we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
And going back to the first episode of the show is because I also watched and talked about the movie that tied in with that, which I was really excited for, but was nothing special. And it was actually, the game was better than the movie.
Yeah, and even then, even though the game was better than the movie, I did find the game to feel, I found it feeling a lot
samey,
kind of a almost like it didn't have quite as much heart to it because it was like made for people. It felt like it was made for people who had watched the movie and now just wanted to play the movie.
Yeah, and the funny thing is nobody saw the movie with the game sold Gamebusters.
Yeah, but it did still have that like Ratchet and Clank feel, and it was fun to play through. But right before Rift Apart came out, I was like talking to you about how, I was like, I feel like I've been disconnected from the series for a while, and I'm not really sure what's going on anymore. And so you sent me a YouTube video of like, that was like 10 minutes long that walked through the entire history
bullet
of the
points
series.
of all the main games. Yeah,
that was really, really helpful for me. And when I started Rift Apart, I felt very caught up and
yeah.
and
well, the nice thing is for Rift Apart, because also keep in mind it's been 5 years since the last Ratchet game. They took a big gap to work on Spider-Man, and it's also Insomniac, who just has a very amazing track record because it's Ratchet, it's those 2 Spider-Man games, it's the original Spyros. And one that I think is underrated, Sunset Overdrive, which there actually are references to in this game. But it's just like they're one of the most like, they have like one of the best track records, I feel. They made a lot of games, and like even Ratchet, like sometimes when they try to do different genres, they get a multiplayer spinoff, it's not that great. But when they're sticking to the conventional formula and building on that, they work wonders. And this really does, because we were talking about the PS4 and feel the same. This feels like a step up in presentation for sure.
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, starting just with like graphical quality alone and like the ray tracing.
It looks like a movie.
It looks like a movie.
It looks better than the actual movie.
It is the first game I've ever played that feels like it cracks that thing of like feeling like I'm playing like a Pixar quality movie where it's like between, we don't even like they don't even feel like cutscenes anymore. It feels like a continuation of action where you're just not playing.
They do the Spider-Man thing where it won't do a camera cut. It'll be like, like in the opening scene, Ratchet, you jump him towards a platform and it kind of takes your control from him to grab it and do like a dramatic shot where he's flailing from it and then cut back to you when he jumps up. It's
even cleaner though. It's even cleaner than Spider-Man. They learned from Spider-Man and I think something about they really cracked the code on like figuring out how to make this cartoonish style like really work on this high like graphical presentation level. It pops beautifully to the point that for the first 5 minutes of playing the game, I was like a little bit discombobulated by it. Like there was so much going on the screen,
like the big parade opening thing.
Yeah, there was so much going on. And it's all so like crisp that it felt wild to play. And of course, like 5 minutes in, I was like, it didn't feel that like weird anymore.
You felt at home again.
I felt at home again, but it's wild in the beginning.
Yeah, there's a bigger emphasis, like the gunplay and platforming is relatively unchanged from what you know from Ratchet, but there's a bigger emphasis on these scripted set pieces, like in Spider-Man and other like Sony blockbusters, where like the environment will coming down around you, or you're on a rail having to switch back and forth. I think everybody saw like the part with the Fixer, that like Shadow the Colossus-sized robot, who's like pulling this canyon apart by going on ground rails, and that's also incorporating like this does such a cool thing with that like near instant loading with like the rift changing in state dimensions, like that opening montage where you're falling through all these different dimensions and there's no loading. And I just love how like you can just get into a planet, get into your ship and you're at another planet in a few seconds.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It feels more. They actually even do the thing where like they'll have a cutscene with Clank and Rivet, the new main character, and it'll do a wipe like Star Wars style, and it's Ratchet on another planet, and it's all real time.
But I will say, now that you've brought it up, the greatest thing about this game is actually got nothing to do with like the next gen feel of it. It's the character Rivet, who is this other dimensions version of Ratchet. She's a female Lombax, and looking at like the early trailers of the game, I knew she was playable. I was excited to play as a different character, but she looked like a side character you'd be playing as. And playing through the game, having both finished it now, I think I can say with a good amount of certainty, you play for her more than you play as Ratchet.
It is more her story than Ratchet's.
And they use Ratchet and Clank as kind of foils for her and kind of her robot companion, Kit. And
Kit was hidden from all the promos.
Yeah,
I had her spoiled from it, but it is so cool when like there's a cutscene when he falls off this building and meets Ratchet, and you're like, oh, I see who she's supposed to be.
And it's wonderful because we basically get this new story of this this heroic person, but who's lived a very different life from Ratchet, and who Ratchet has grown throughout this series, and gets to kind of like, and so has Clank, and they both get to like impart a little bit of their kind of experience into Kit and Rivet, who become their own hero team together by the end of this game.
I saw people talking about like there is an interesting angle that you can look at it in terms of like aspects of self-doubt and mental health with characters like Kit, because she has a lot of guilt on her. And a lot of baggage, and
as you find out more, I think it's justifiably so.
She did some stuff she regrets, and I do want to bring up her voice actress, like Ratchet Clank and Returning to Dr. Nefarious, who's like the best villain in the series. Same voices they've always had. Rivet is played by Jennifer Hale, who you've played a little bit of now, Mass Effect, the original trilogy.
Oh yes, and I know she is well loved for that, and I think for good reason.
But I was like, oh, she's Princess and Powerpuff Girls, and you're like, oh,
yeah, that too.
The teacher too, Miss Keen.
Yep,
she's done a billion things. But I just found out Kit was voiced by Deborah Wilson, who was on Mad TV, but she's done a couple voices. In Fallen Order, she's the mentor, the former Jedi.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's pretty prolific. I think it's cool to see her do it. Like, it doesn't sound like her normal voice. It doesn't sound exactly like Clank either. And yeah, there's some other cool stuff. Like we talked about how like you watched the bullet point list of facts. I do think it feels fairly newcomer friendly, even though it's returning to the original. Because the PS4 and the game and movie were a reboot. They were their own alternate take on the first game.
Yeah.
This is returning to the main original canon after like 8 years or something like that.
Yeah, it actually lays it out in a pretty clean way. You don't need a lot of past info, and even things like the Dimensionator and like reuniting Ratchet with his, trying to find other Lombaxes.
Yes, that's the main thing from the PS3 games. You find out Ratchet is the last of his kind.
Yeah, is presented in such a way that you like, they've dealt with it before, but it's like it's. You don't need a ton of information to go on.
They explain what you need to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Even like motivation, like how Nefarious at this point. I love this. He's motivated by losing to them.
Yeah,
he's so sick of losing because in the PS2 game he wanted to make everybody a robot. In PS3, basically there's a thing that can be used as a time machine, and he wants to change history so that bad guys always win. So he'll win.
And it's great too. They do a very good job in this game of creating alternate dimension versions of a lot of our favorite characters, and we just brought it up in the when talking about Black Widow, but I was kind of I loved how much Captain Quark, which is one of my favorite characters from Ratchet, kind of reminded me of Red Guardian throughout the game, with kind of just like the blowharded like obsession with their own heroics thing, who ends up being somebody who wants to do good and tries to do good.
You're talking about Captain Quantum.
What do you mean?
His dimensional counterpart.
Captain Quark also wants to do good.
Yeah, he's just kind of a bigger jerk about it.
Yeah, he's a bigger ass. I mean, Red Guardian's a pretty huge ass.
Okay, you're right.
But I think, at the end of the day, like they have both multiple times, come back and ended up doing the right thing.
Ratchet even touches on that when like Quantum asks, like, why do you stay with these guys? I'm like, he does help out.
Yeah.
It's just for a lot of time me, it's like he was trying to kill them in the first couple of games, but they got over it.
Yeah, and I really like the way Nefarious is handled, because the original Dimension Nefarious is your main villain for like the first half of the game, and then Emperor Nefarious from the new dimension is revealed, and he makes old Nefarious look like such a putz.
Yeah,
it's so fun.
I am thankful though. I did correctly assume he's going to show up later and be the actual villain, because it's clearly like stronger. But I was worried they would make him super serious, and I'm like, he's more dangerous, but he's still theatrical.
He's more capable, but he is still a jackass.
He's got this British drawl. He throws like a little celebration with confetti and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He makes like little toast with champagne glasses with Nefarious. It's the series has. I don't want a Ratchet that takes itself super seriously.
Yeah, no, that's not what we're here for.
This and the PS3 games hit a good balance between having some emotional parts and some but still being silly.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, I just want to say the one thing that it really takes from that it succeeds in, that is kind of a all Ratchet games thing that it really succeeds in, is just that it feels great to play. Like mechanically, it just is so smooth, and it's like it's hard without being impossible, and it's just a super fun game. I can't highly recommend it enough.
Yeah, provided you can find a PS5. But take solace in the fact that there are only 3 big exclusives for it so far. I guess 4 if you count Astro's Playroom, which is really fun but very short.
Yeah, Astro's Playroom is probably the best like
pack-in game,
console pack-in game besides like Wii Sports.
Yeah, that's the other best one.
But it's still it's still a pack-in game. You're not gonna be revisiting it forever.
But if you're our age, you're gonna be ready for some heavy nostalgia with that game.
Yes,
I
exactly.
was not prepared. But really awesome game, and I guess now we can move on to a really awesome movie.
But first, we're gonna pause so I can pee.
Yes. And I'll just render this.
Cool.